The grocery store foods sitting in your kitchen right now are banned in over 30 countries. Not because of a trade war. Not because of politics. Because governments around the world looked at the ingredients and said, we're not doing this to our people. Here's the number that should make you stop mid-bite. The United States has approved over 3,000 food additives. The European Union allows around 300. That's not a slight difference. That's a 10-to-1 gap. And it's not because Europe is being overcautious. It's because America operates on a system where companies sell first and answer questions later. But here's what really stings. We're not talking about exotic imports or specialty products. We're talking about the bread in your sandwich, the cereal your kids ate this morning, the milk in your coffee, the chicken you grilled last Tuesday. All of it on shelves in every grocery store near you. All of it banned or restricted by the European Union, Japan, Canada, the UK, and dozens more. And here's the part that most videos in this genre miss entirely. This isn't just a list of things to fear. I'm going to give you 15 grocery store foods to never buy again, but I'm also going to give you 7 that are genuinely, legitimately clean. Foods that deserve more space in your cart, not less. Specific brands. Specific labels. Specific language to look for. By the end of this video, you'll have a completely different relationship with your grocery list. Not paranoid. Informed. Let's get into it. Item 1. Chlorine-washed chicken. The chemical bath you never voted for. Let's start with something nearly every American household buys every single week. Chicken. In the United States, poultry processors rinse chicken carcasses in chlorine dioxide solutions after slaughter. The stated purpose is to kill bacteria, Salmonella, E. coli Campylobacter. Sounds like a reasonable safety measure. The European Union disagrees. Strongly. The EU banned chlorine-washed poultry in 1997, and that ban has held firm for nearly 3 decades. The UK upheld it after Brexit. Canada has restrictions as well. Here's the argument that EU regulators make, and it's worth sitting with. The chlorine bath is not a safety system. It's a cleanup system. It lets producers skip proper hygiene practices during farming, transport, and slaughter, then douse the contamination away at the end. The EU's philosophy is the opposite: prevent contamination from occurring in the first place, rather than chemically treating it after the fact. And the kicker? The cleanup system isn't even working. The CDC estimates that Salmonella causes approximately 1.35 million infections in the United States every year. European poultry, raised without the chemical wash but under stricter farming hygiene standards, consistently records lower contamination rates. More chemicals, worse outcomes. That's a hard stat to argue against. Brands affected include virtually all conventional U.S. poultry, Tyson, Perdue, Pilgrim's Pride, and every store brand chicken at Walmart. Unless your label specifically says air-chilled or no chlorine wash, assume the chemical bath happened. The good news: air-chilled chicken skips the chlorine entirely. It's chilled using cold air rather than water immersion, which also happens to produce a drier, better textured bird. Brands like Bell & Evans, Mary's Chicken, and most USDA organic poultry use air chilling. It costs a little more. It's worth it. But what's hiding in your pork is something even your butcher probably doesn't know about. Item 2. Ractopamine in pork. The growth drug most countries rejected. Ractopamine. If you've never heard of it, you're not alone. Most Americans haven't. And that's by design. Ractopamine is a feed additive given to pigs, cattle, and turkeys in the weeks before slaughter. It makes them grow leaner and faster, which means more profit per animal. It's fed to an estimated 60 to 80% of U.S. pigs before they reach the slaughterhouse. The European Union bans it entirely. China bans it entirely, so strictly, in fact, that China has rejected entire cargo shipments of U.S. pork at the border. Russia, Taiwan, and while widely cited as 160 countries, the verified figure is approximately 26 countries with outright bans, with many more imposing strict maximum residue limits, have also prohibited or severely restricted it. Research published in the journal Toxicology Letters found that ractopamine residues can elevate heart rate and cause cardiovascular stress in both animals and humans. The Codex Alimentarius Commission, the international food safety body that sets global standards, spent years debating ractopamine and ultimately passed its safety guideline by the narrowest margin in its entire history. That's how controversial this drug is at the highest levels of food science. Here's the thing that should bother you most. Ractopamine is not labeled anywhere on the package. You cannot look at your pork chops in the grocery store and know whether ractopamine was used. The label won't tell you. The butcher won't know. The only way to opt out is to buy USDA organic pork, which prohibits ractopamine by regulation. Brands like Niman Ranch and Applegate offer ractopamine-free options that aren't always organic certified but explicitly state no ractopamine use. Stay with me on this, because what's coming in a few items will completely change how you read any food label forever. Item 3. RBGH growth hormones in milk. The hormone in your morning coffee. Open most American fridges, and you'll find milk from cows that were injected with recombinant bovine growth hormone, RBGH, also called RBGT. This synthetic hormone increases milk production by up to 15% per cow. Great for dairy company profit margins. Controversial for every other reason. Canada banned RBGH. The European Union banned it. Australia banned it. Japan banned it. New Zealand banned it. Canada's health review specifically found that cows treated with the hormone suffered higher rates of mastitis, painful udder infections, lameness, and infertility. And crucially, the review concluded there were unresolved questions about effects on human health. The concern centers on IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor 1. Milk from RBGH-treated cows has measurably elevated IGF-1 levels. Research reviewed by the American Cancer Society has documented associations between elevated IGF-1 and increased risk of prostate and breast cancer. These are associations, not proven causation, but when that association exists in multiple countries, here's the label trap. The word natural on a milk carton tells you nothing about hormone use. Even some store-brand milks have quietly switched to RBGT-free sourcing due to consumer pressure, including some Walmart Great Value products. But the only label language that actually protects you is RBGT-free or no artificial hormones. If neither phrase appears, assume the hormone was used. Brands that explicitly ban it, Organic Valley, Stonyfield Horizon, and most store-brand organic milks. Check the specific label, not the brand name, the label. Item 4. Potassium bromate in bread. California's dirty secret that 49 other states ignore. Here is a fact that perfectly illustrates how broken U.S. food regulation is. California is the only state in America that requires a cancer warning label on products containing potassium bromate. Every other state, no warning, no restriction. Potassium bromate is a dough conditioner that makes bread rise higher and faster and look fluffier. It's cheap and efficient. The EU bans it. The UK bans it. Canada bans it. China bans it. Brazil bans it. The International Agency for Research on Cancer classifies potassium bromate as a Group 2B carcinogen, meaning it's possibly carcinogenic to humans. Animal studies have linked it to kidney tumors, thyroid tumors, and gastrointestinal cancers. And this isn't just in artisan loaves or boutique brands. It's in fast food buns. Certain varieties of Wonder Bread have historically used it. Various supermarket bakery items contain it. The next time you order a burger, the bun it came on may have been made with a chemical that would get a food manufacturer arrested in parts of the world. To avoid it, look for the word bromate-free on the label, or choose USDA organic bread, which prohibits potassium bromate by regulation. Dave's Killer Bread, Ezekiel brand, and most organic bakery sections are safe choices. And here's the part the food industry really doesn't want you thinking about. The companies that use these ingredients in America already know how to make bread without them. They do it for their European customers every single day. The decision to use potassium bromate in American bread is a choice. A deliberate economic choice. Item 5. Carrageenan in healthy foods. The organic trap. Here's where this list takes a turn that most similar videos miss entirely, and it's the turn that matters most for people who are actually paying attention to their health. Carrageenan is a thickening agent derived from red seaweed. That sounds natural. That sounds harmless. And that is exactly the trap. In 2018, the European Union banned Carrageenan from infant formula across all member states. The European Food Safety Authority reviewed the evidence and concluded that questions about intestinal inflammation warranted removing it from products designed for the most vulnerable consumers, babies. Animal studies have linked degraded carrageenan to intestinal lesions, inflammatory bowel disease markers, and colon tumor promotion. In the United States, Carrageenan is still approved. And here is the part that matters. It is prevalent in products specifically marketed to health-conscious shoppers. Organic cream, organic almond milk, organic protein shakes, certain organic infant formulas. This is the organic trap. You switch to organic specifically to avoid the kind of chemical you just learned about in the previous items. And then carrageenan snuck in through the back door because it sounds like seaweed, not a synthetic additive. Look for it by name in the ingredient list. It will always be listed as carrageenan. It doesn't have a code number that hides it. Once you see it once, you'll start noticing how often it appears in things you'd never expect. Infant nutrition brands to specifically check include those where the EU-compliant version of the same product has already removed it because, again, these companies know exactly what they're doing. You bought organic to protect yourself. The industry is counting on you assuming that's enough. It isn't always. Item 6. Titanium dioxide. The white paint pigment in your candy. The same chemical compound used to make white paint brighter, titanium dioxide, is also used to make your candy, frosting, and coffee creamer look whiter and more visually appealing. And until recently, it was completely legal to do this in the United States, Europe, and most of the world. In 2022, the European Union officially banned titanium dioxide as a food additive. The European Food Safety Authority concluded that it could not rule out the possibility of DNA damage at the cellular level, primarily due to nanoparticles that accumulate in organs over time. When an official scientific body says we cannot rule out DNA damage, that's not a green light. The FDA still considers it safe. Products that have contained titanium dioxide include Skittles, certain Hostess products, some chewing gums, powdered sugar donuts, and popular non-dairy coffee creamers. Skittles was hit with a consumer lawsuit in California after the EU ban renewed scrutiny on the ingredient. The case argued that Mars, the manufacturer, was aware of the concerns and continued using the additive for American consumers. Here's what to know. Titanium dioxide can also be listed on ingredient labels as CI77891 in some product categories. So the full label check is both titanium dioxide and that code. Flip the package. If either appears, put it back. The good news is that many manufacturers have voluntarily reformulated in the US, following the EU ban and the lawsuits. But many is not all. Check every time. Item 7. BHA and BHT preservatives. The carcinogens buried in the last line. Two chemical preservatives power a massive portion of the American processed food industry, and most people consuming them have never noticed their names. BHA, butylated hydroxyanisole. BHT, butylated hydroxytoluene. They prevent fats from going rancid in cereals, chips, butter, and dozens of packaged products. They extend shelf life. They are cheap. And they are completely unnecessary. Japan has banned BHA entirely. The UK and several European nations restrict both BHA and BHT in food products. The U.S. National Toxicology Program, a division of the Department of Health and Human Services, lists BHA. Here's the frustration. Brands like Nature's Path, Cascadian Farm, and every USDA organic cereal on the market prove beyond any doubt that you can make a shelf-stable product without BHA or BHT. The preservatives are not required. They are chosen because they're cheaper than better alternatives. Products that have historically contained BHA and BHT include certain General Mills cereals, some Kellogg's products, Frito-Lay chips, and this surprises most people, certain butter and margarine brands. They are almost always buried at the very bottom of the ingredient list, after the vitamins and minerals. That placement is not accidental. Now you know where to look. The next item is making actual national headlines right now, and it's something millions of American children are eating for breakfast this morning. Item 8. Artificial dyes, red 40, yellow 5, yellow 6. The legal hyperactivity chemical in your kid's cereal. This is the ingredient fight that has finally, after decades, started to break through into mainstream conversation. And the science has been screaming about it for years before the brands started listening. In February 2026, Target announced it will phase out cereals containing synthetic food dyes. General Mills committed to removing artificial dyes from all of its cereals by summer 2026. These are not small decisions. These are major corporate reversals driven by the weight of accumulating evidence. The European Union has required warning labels on any food containing red 40, yellow 5, or yellow 6 for years. The label reads, "May have an adverse effect on activity and attention in children." Norway and Austria have banned several of these dyes outright. A landmark study published in The Lancet, one of the most respected medical journals on Earth, found that artificial food dyes significantly increased hyperactivity in children. Not just in children with diagnosed ADHD. In all children. The FDA's own advisory committee reviewed this evidence and voted that the data warranted genuine concern, but stopped short of an immediate ban. Right now, if you're watching this at home, go grab the cereal box from your kitchen. Flip it over. Look at the bottom of the ingredient list. If you see red 40, yellow 5, yellow 6, blue 1, or blue 2, that product has no equivalent nutritional value with the dye versus without it. These dyes are purely cosmetic. They add zero flavor, zero nutrition, zero function beyond making the cereal look more colorful to children. American products loaded with these dyes include Fruit Loops, Lucky Charms, Skittles, certain flavors of Gatorade, Doritos. The exact same products sold in Europe either carry warning labels or have already been reformulated with natural colorings. Same logo. Different ingredient list. Different standard applied based on your zip code. We're about halfway through the list, and the next item is one of the most stunning hypocrisies in American food safety history, because it specifically involves something that you may have given to an infant. Item 9. Azodicarbonamide, ADA. The yoga mat chemical that never left your sandwich. When Subway got caught using the same chemical found in yoga mats and shoe soles in its sandwich bread, it became a viral news story. The chemical is Azodicarbonamide, ADA. It's a dough conditioner that makes bread softer and spongier and extends its shelf life. The European Union bans it. Australia bans it. And Singapore has the most direct position of any country on Earth. If you use Azodicarbonamide in food in Singapore, you face up to 15 years in prison and a fine of up to $450,000. That's the penalty for putting this ingredient in bread. The World Health Organization has linked ADA to respiratory issues and skin sensitization in workers exposed to it in food processing plants. When ADA is heated during baking, it breaks down into semicarbazide, a compound that has raised cancer concerns in laboratory studies. Subway removed ADA from its bread in 2014 after public pressure. Here's what most people don't know. The backlash was specifically about Subway, so Subway got the headlines. But the vast majority of other fast food chains, including certain McDonald's buns and Wendy's buns, continued using it, and barely anyone noticed because Subway had already absorbed the outrage. Packaged breads, hot dog buns, and various frozen bread products still contain ADA. Check ingredient lists for the full word Azodicarbonamide. It's always spelled out, and it's not easy to miss once you know what you're looking for. European bakeries produce millions of loaves daily without it. The chemical exists in American food for one reason: it's cheaper and faster for industrial production. No flavor benefit. No nutritional value. Just cost savings on the manufacturer's side and a potential health question mark on yours. Item 10. PFAS in food packing. The invisible chemical coating your takeout container. Everything we've covered so far has been an ingredient, something mixed into the food itself. This one is different. This one isn't in the food. It's on the container. And it gets into the food every single time you eat from it. PFAS, per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, are a class of synthetic chemicals used to make food packaging grease-resistant and heat-tolerant. Microwave popcorn bags, fast food burger wrappers, pizza boxes, the heat-resistant lining inside paper coffee cups, takeout containers from most restaurants. All of these have historically been coated with PFAS. The CDC's National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey has detected PFAS in the blood samples. These are called forever chemicals because they do not break down in the human body or in the environment. They accumulate continuously. The EPA has linked PFAS exposure to increased cancer risk, thyroid disruption, immune system suppression, and reproductive harm. Here's the regulatory picture. Denmark led the EU in restricting PFAS in food contact materials. As of 2024 and 2025, California, Washington, New York, Maine, and several other U.S. states have passed or enacted bans on PFAS. At the federal level, the FDA has been reviewing the issue, and some voluntary industry reformulations are underway. But underway is not done. The packaging on your takeout dinner right now may still be coated with these chemicals. The practical fix is straightforward. Never microwave food in its original paper packaging. Transfer it to a glass or ceramic container first. For fast food, if you're eating immediately, the exposure window is short. For microwaving leftovers in takeout containers, that's where the heat-driven transfer is most significant. One habit change, meaningfully lower exposure. PFAS gets into your food through the package. The next item gets into your food through the soil, and it ends up in products specifically marketed for babies. Item 11. Arsenic in rice and baby food. The contamination your baby didn't sign up for. In 2021, a congressional investigation examined the contents of baby food sold by major American brands. The findings were alarming. Gerber, Earth's Best, Happy Baby. All of them contained concerning levels of inorganic arsenic and other heavy metals, including lead, cadmium, and mercury. Inorganic arsenic is not a possible carcinogen. It's a Group 1 carcinogen, which means there is definitive scientific consensus that it causes cancer in humans. The European Union has set a strict maximum limit for arsenic in rice products intended for infants at 0.1 milligrams per kilogram. The United States has been considerably slower to establish and enforce equivalent limits. The source of the contamination is historical. Rice grown in the southern United States, particularly in Arkansas, Louisiana, and Texas, absorbs higher levels of arsenic from the soil. The reason is a painful legacy. Those fields were previously cotton fields, treated for decades with arsenic-based pesticides. The arsenic remains in the soil. Rice, more than almost any other crop, absorbs arsenic efficiently through its root system. Consumer Reports testing confirmed that rice from the southern U.S. states had the highest arsenic concentrations. California-grown rice, Indian basmati, and Pakistani basmati consistently tested lower. Practical protection. Rinse your rice thoroughly before cooking. This reduces surface arsenic. Use a higher water-to-rice ratio during cooking and drain the excess water rather than absorbing it all. Diversify grains. Oats, quinoa, and millet are lower arsenic alternatives for regular rotation. And for infant feeding specifically, rice cereal as a primary solid introduction food has fallen out of favor among many pediatric dietitians. Item 12. Glyphosate in oats and cereals. The herbicide in 95% of your breakfast. Glyphosate is the active ingredient in Roundup herbicide. It's the most widely used herbicide in U.S. agriculture. And there's a specific reason it ends up in your oatmeal that most coverage of this topic gets wrong. It's not just about genetically modified crops absorbing glyphosate during growth. The higher residue problem is a process called pre-harvest desiccation. Conventional wheat and oat farmers spray glyphosate directly onto crops in the weeks before harvest, not primarily to kill weeds, but to dry out the crop quickly and accelerate harvest timing. The glyphosate is absorbed into the grain itself. You then eat the grain. The residue is essentially built into the food at that point, not sitting on the surface. The International Agency for Research on Cancer classified glyphosate as a Group 2B probable human carcinogen in 2015. Bayer, which acquired Monsanto and inherited its glyphosate liability, has paid out or settled cases worth billions of dollars involving plaintiffs who developed cancer after prolonged exposure. Over 100,000 plaintiffs have filed claims. Testing by the Environmental Working Group, conducted in 2018, found glyphosate residues in 95% of oat-based food products tested, including Cheerios, Quaker Oats, and Nature Valley granola bars. Some samples contain levels that researchers argued exceeded conservative safety thresholds for children, based on EWG's own benchmarks. The solution is clean and simple: USDA organic oats. Organic certification prohibits glyphosate use at any stage, including pre-harvest. Nature's Path, Bob's Red Mill Organic, and the 365 Organic brand at Whole Foods are all reliable options. Let's take stock. You've just been introduced to 12 chemicals and additives hiding in everyday American grocery store food. We have 3 more to cover. Then I'm paying off the second half of the promise I made at the start of this video: 7 foods that are genuinely clean. Stay with me. Item 13. Synthetic hormones in beef. The 35-year trade war on your dinner plate. The European Union banned hormone-treated beef imports in 1989. That ban has now been in place for over 35 years. It is the longest-running trade dispute in the history of US-EU relations. And the reason it has lasted that long is that neither side is willing to move, because both sides believe they're protecting their people. The United States currently permits 6 growth hormones in beef cattle production: estradiol, progesterone, testosterone, zeranol, melengastrol acetate, and trenbolone acetate. These hormones accelerate growth and increase muscle mass, reducing the time and feed required to bring cattle to slaughter weight. The EU's scientific committee reviewed the evidence and concluded that residues of these hormones in beef pose potential health risks, particularly for children, pregnant women, and individuals with hormone-sensitive conditions. The endocrine disruption concern is significant. Synthetic estrogens and androgens in food, even at low residue levels, may interact with human hormonal systems in ways that are difficult to study and harder to prove, but not easier to dismiss. Virtually all conventional U.S. beef from the major producers, Cargill, Tyson, JBS, and National Beef, uses growth hormones. That covers the majority of beef at Walmart, Kroger, Costco, and most supermarkets. The ground beef in your fast food burger almost certainly came from hormone-treated cattle. Here's the part that should bother you. There is no labeling requirement for hormone use in beef. 0. Unless a product voluntarily states no hormones administered and backs it up with USDA organic or American Grass-Fed Association certification. Brands that explicitly guarantee hormone-free sourcing include White Oak Pastures, Applegate, and ButcherBox. They cost more. 35 countries would agree it's worth it. Item 14. Red dye, number 3. Banned from your lipstick in 1990, still in your child's food, until 2027. This one is not a gray area. This is not a some studies suggest situation. This is a timeline so damning that it speaks entirely for itself. In 1990, the FDA banned red dye number 3 from cosmetics, from lipstick, from blush, from beauty products applied to skin. The reason was animal studies showing thyroid tumors in rats exposed to the dye. The FDA determined it was too risky to put on your face. And then they kept it legal in food for 35 more years. In January 2025, the FDA finally moved to ban red dye number 3 from food products. Manufacturers had been given until 2027 to reformulate. Which means, right now, as you watch this video, red dye number 3 is still legally present on store shelves. The ban has been announced. The dye is still in use. The timeline of removal spans from an announcement made in 2025 to actual removal by 2027. The European Union restricted red dye number 3 years before the US acted. Products that currently or recently contained red dye number 3 include certain bright red candies, canned fruit cocktail, maraschino cherries, some cake frostings, and this one surprises people, certain over-the-counter liquid medications, particularly children's cough syrups and liquid vitamin supplements. It's worth checking the medicine cabinet, not just the candy aisle. The FDA determined this dye was unsafe for cosmetic use in 1990. That's the same FDA that allowed it to remain in food for children for another 3.5 decades. That 35-year gap tells you everything you need to know about the pace of U.S. food safety reform. Item 15. Trans fats, but less partially hydrogenated oils. The zero that isn't zero. Denmark was the first country in the world to restrict industrially produced trans fats in food, back in 2003. In the years that followed, Studies documented a measurable decline in cardiovascular disease mortality in Denmark. Other European countries followed. The World Health Organization called for the global elimination of trans fats by 2023. In the United States, the FDA declared partially hydrogenated oils, the primary source of artificial trans fats, no longer generally recognized as safe in 2018. That sounds like a ban. It is not a complete ban, because there is a loophole, and American food companies found it immediately. Any product containing less than 0.5 grams of trans fat per serving can legally list 0 grams on its nutrition label. 0. The math is straightforward. Eat 3 servings of such a product, and you've consumed up to 1.5 grams of trans fat. The American Heart Association is unambiguous. There is no safe level of trans fat consumption. It raises LDL cholesterol, lowers HDL cholesterol, and increases risk of heart disease, stroke, and type 2 diabetes. Products that may still contain trace trans fats under this labeling loophole include certain microwave popcorn brands, frozen pie crusts and pastry dough, some packaged cookies and crackers, non-dairy whip toppings, margarine, and certain flavored coffee creamers. The way to catch it is simple. Ignore the nutrition label entirely. Go straight to the ingredient list. If you see the words partially hydrogenated anywhere in that list, regardless of what the front of the package says, regardless of what the 0G trans fat line on the nutrition panel says, that product contains trans fats. The 0 on the label is a legal technicality. The partially hydrogenated in the ingredient list is the actual truth. Denmark protected its citizens from this ingredient in 2003. American food companies fought equivalent restrictions for over a decade. And even now, the loophole remains. Choose which standard you want to hold your food to. All right, that's 15. 15 foods, 15 ingredients, 15 examples of a regulatory system that moves slowly while people eat first and ask questions later. But here's what I want to say before we get to the clean list, and this matters. The goal of knowing what to avoid isn't to make you afraid of your grocery store. Fear is exhausting. Fear is not sustainable. And fear, ironically, is how the food industry wins, because if everything feels overwhelming, people stop trying. The goal is clarity. You now know what to look for on a label. You know which categories carry the highest risk. And in the next few minutes, I'm going to give you 7 foods that you can add to your cart with genuine confidence. Foods that have minimal processing, minimal risk, maximum nutrition, and the kind of ingredient list that tells you exactly what you're getting. These aren't diet foods. These aren't trend foods. These are foods that have been eaten in essentially their current form for centuries, and that the most aggressive regulatory bodies on the planet have very little argument with. The 7 actually clean foods. Clean food 1. Plain frozen vegetables. The number 1 most underrated food in the entire grocery store is plain frozen vegetables. Not the ones with added sauce. Not the ones with cheese blend. Just the vegetable, frozen. Here's what most people get backwards. Frozen vegetables are often nutritionally superior to fresh produce that has traveled days from farm to store shelf. Most frozen vegetables are blanched and frozen within hours of harvest, at peak nutritional value. The vitamin C content, the fiber, the phytonutrients, all largely preserved. Meanwhile, fresh broccoli that traveled 4 days in a refrigerated truck has already lost a measurable portion of those same nutrients. The ingredient list on plain frozen vegetables is almost always one word: the vegetable. No additives. No preservatives. No colors. No nothing. This is one of the few sections of the grocery store where the cheaper option is also frequently the cleaner option. Go to the freezer aisle with confidence. Clean food 2. Canned wild-caught sardines, or anchovies. Canned wild-caught sardines, anchovies, and mackerel are among the most nutritionally dense, minimally processed foods you can buy at any grocery store price point. They are rich in omega-3 fatty acids, calcium, vitamin D, and complete protein. They are small fish that live at the bottom of the food chain, which means they accumulate far less mercury and PFAS. Check the ingredient list. Wild-caught sardines in olive oil. Sardines, olive oil, salt. That's 3 ingredients. That's the entire list. No preservatives needed because the canning process itself is the preservation method. Wild Planet, Season Brand, and Kohl's are consistently reliable options for quality and sourcing transparency. Clean Food 3. USDA Organic Whole Rolled Oats. Organic whole rolled oats solve multiple problems simultaneously. By choosing USDA Organic, you eliminate glyphosate exposure from the pre-harvest desiccation we covered earlier. You eliminate BHT, which conventional oats sometimes contain as a preservative. And you get one of the best documented soluble fiber sources available, beta-glucan, which has been shown in multiple clinical studies to reduce LDL cholesterol and moderate blood glucose response. One ingredient. Zero additives. One of the most studied foods for cardiovascular benefit on Earth. Bob's Red Mill Organic Rolled Oats and Nature's Path Organic Heritage Flakes are clean, widely available choices. Clean Food 4. Plain full-fat Greek yogurt from RBGH-free sources. Plain full-fat Greek yogurt from a brand that explicitly states no RBGH or artificial hormones. The ingredient list should be 2 or 3 items: milk, live active cultures. That's it. No thickeners. No Carrageenan. No added sugar. No modified starch. The full-fat version is important here. Reduced fat and non-fat yogurts frequently add thickeners and stabilizers, including Carrageenan, which we covered earlier, to compensate for the texture lost when fat is removed. Full-fat versions generally don't need those additions, because the fat itself provides the texture. Stonyfield Organic, Maple Hill, and most store-brand organic Greek yogurts meet these criteria. Read the label every time. Formulations change. Clean Food 5. Dried legumes. Lentils, chickpeas, black beans. If you want the cleanest possible protein source in the grocery store, one with essentially zero processing, zero additives, lentils, chickpeas, black beans, dried peas. One ingredient. The legume. Nothing else. No preservatives because they don't need them. Low moisture content makes them shelf-stable without chemicals. No dyes because nobody's trying to make lentils look more exciting. No hormones because they're plants. They are extraordinarily affordable, extraordinarily clean, and among the most nutrient-dense foods in the store per dollar spent. High in fiber, plant protein, iron, folate, and resistant starch. The only processing they need is your kitchen. Soak overnight, cook with water. The absence of anything added is itself the selling point. Clean Food 6. Single origin, harvest-dated extra virgin olive oil. Extra virgin olive oil is genuinely one of the most studied and most consistently clean cooking fats available. One ingredient, cold-pressed, no additives. The issue, and this is important, is fraud. The olive oil industry has a well-documented adulteration problem, with lower quality oils blended into or sold as extra virgin. Multiple investigations have found that a significant percentage of olive oils labeled as extra virgin do not meet the actual chemical standards for that classification. The way to buy clean olive oil is simple. Look for 3 things on the label: a single country of origin, not a blend of multiple countries, a harvest date within the last 18 months, not just a best buy date, an actual harvest date, and dark glass packaging. Light degrades quality and increases rancidity. California Olive Ranch, with the COUXC certification. Kirkland Signature Evo O from Italy, with a visible harvest date, and specialty brands from Greece and Spain, with PDO designations. Clean Food 7. Whole single ingredient spices. The final item on the clean list doesn't get nearly enough credit. Plain whole or ground single ingredient spices. Cumin, turmeric, coriander, black pepper, cinnamon, paprika, garlic powder are among the most nutritionally active and additive-free foods in the entire store. The trap to avoid is spice blends and seasoning mixes, which frequently contain anti-caking agents, added salt, sometimes sugar, and occasionally artificial colors or natural flavors, a label term that can hide a range of compounds. Single ingredient spices have none of those additions. They are simply the plant, dried and ground. Many of them, turmeric, black pepper, cinnamon, ginger, have substantial bodies of research on anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties. Build your flavor from single spices. Combine them yourself. The ingredient list is one word. That's the cleanest item in the store. Here's the bigger picture. And this is the part I want you to actually remember. Everything on the first list, all 15 of those items, they exist in American food for one core reason. The U.S. regulatory system operates on a principle called GRAS, generally recognized as safe. Under GRAS, a company can introduce a new food additive by determining for itself, using its own research, that the ingredient is safe. The FDA does not need to review or approve GRAS determinations before the product goes to market. Europe operates on the opposite principle. Prove it's safe before you sell it. The burden of proof is on the manufacturer, and it runs before the product hits shelves. That is why the EU list of approved food additives is 300. America's is 3,000. And here is what really stings, maybe the most important fact in this entire video. Many of these same American companies already make cleaner versions of these exact products for their European customers. The Fruit Loops sold in the UK don't have red 40. They use natural colorings. The Gatorade sold in several European markets uses natural colors. McDonald's buns in Europe don't contain Azodicarbonamide. The Skittles reformulated for EU compliance don't have titanium dioxide. Same brand. Same logo. Different ingredient list. Depending on which side of the Atlantic you live on. This is not a food science disagreement. This is a business decision. These companies know exactly how to make safer food. They do it already. The question is whether the regulatory system in your country requires them to do it for you. 3 rules to take into your next grocery trip. Read the ingredient list, not the front label. The front is marketing. The back is reality. Flip every product before it goes in your cart. Prioritize USDA organic in 4 categories specifically: dairy, meat, bread, and cereals. Those 4 switches address the majority of the items on this list in one move. And go back to the 7 clean foods from this video: frozen vegetables, canned sardines, organic oats, plain Greek yogurt, dried legumes, real olive oil, whole spices. Add more of those. The more space they take in your cart, the less room there is for the ones with the 35 ingredient chemistry experiments on the back. Your money is your vote. Every time you buy from a brand that sources cleanly, labels honestly, and doesn't hide behind a GRAS self-certification, you're voting for a different kind of food system. If this video gave you something useful, hit the like button. It costs you nothing, but it helps this content reach more people who need to see it. Subscribe and ring the bell. This channel keeps breaking these stories down in a way that's actually actionable. And share this with one person in your life who buys groceries. Just one. Drop number 1 in the comments for every item on that first list that's currently somewhere in your kitchen. I read every comment, and I want to know how many of these you were already aware of before today. And if you want to keep going, the next video names specific brands at Walmart, Costco, and Target. Not categories. Not vague warnings. Real brand names. Real testing data. Real evidence of which products are failing and which ones have quietly cleaned up their formulas. Real names. No sugarcoating. You're not going to want to miss that one. Thanks for watching. Stay informed. I'll see you in the next one.